What's up? It says I'm live. It looks like my sound is working. And I hope everybody had a great Christmas. Today's the 28th of December. I did do a live the day after Christmas. In case you missed that one, I'll say it again. I really hope people are enjoying their holidays, whether they celebrate Christmas or, as I like to say, Festivus for the rest of us. Although we do celebrate Christmas for sure in our household. So let me see if I know where my phone is and just send out a couple of quick texts. Give people a minute to find the live stream. And I wanted to talk more. Oh, I'm back in my studio space, so that's exciting. But man, it's been a booger getting it set up. As you can see, it's always different, right? However, I have a lot to talk about with the Rob Reiner situation. I want to talk about some of the crap with the, I call him Donnie Two Dolls sometimes. I came up with Biggly Piggly on my own. Donnie Two Dolls is from Lawrence O'Donnell. And I'm a big fan of Lev Parnas, and he calls him 2 weeks Donnie, or Donnie 2 weeks, because he's always got that in a couple of weeks. What the F is going on with my hair? It's weird looking. I don't know. It's like doing something creative. Anyway, let's get rolling with the like button. Where are you hiding, like button? Right down here. Hit your like button if you don't mind. And make sure you're still subscribed. It's way down there. You can't really see it. Share a video of mine with somebody that you think might like my channel. Turn on your notification bell to ring. And everything I say is simply my opinion for the sake of hoping to start a conversation, open up a discussion, learn something, be educational. All of these videos are made for the tube of you, and it's an infotainment platform there. That helped. It was like sticking out like a broomstick or something. Oh, I tell you. All right, let me twirl my hair. So I have a ton of notes, and I don't want to be on for too long, but let's start with the meeting today that Biggly Piggly had with Zelensky. And I won't go into great detail about it. I haven't watched the whole thing because I can hardly stomach it. I mean, it's really disgusting. He kind of makes fun of all the reporters, and I think Zelensky too, by telling them to dig into the beautiful lunch that he's provided, and then saying, no, forget it. Just get out of here. You'll call it a bribe or something insane like that. I mean, he's so freaking weird. He's lost his mind. And how on earth is he still in the position of that office? How has he not been put in a straitjacket? How has he not been forced out of there? It's pretty freaking frightening. So we've had literally over 1 million new Trumpstein files. We've had people coming out of the woodwork telling their stories, legitimate stories that have been documented before, who didn't feel heard, who are now feeling heard. And one of those worst case scenarios is the woman who was a 13-year-old girl when she was abused by both T and E. And then eventually, I think when she was 19 or 20, she finally reported it to the police. And then 2 weeks later, she was found, and there had been a firearm discharged at her noggin. And that's one of the worst. I'll put a link in the description to a video from a man who says that he's her stepdad and that he had direct interaction with Biggly Piggly about it. like I said, that's one of the worst case scenarios. There's so much awful crap in those files. It's out of control. It's out of control that they're doing the slow roll when they had a deadline, and they're just kind of mocking the system, mocking the victims, mocking the public, mocking all of us, really, to be doing it the way they're doing it. And hopefully they will be charged for that, with what would that be? Like obstruction of justice. There's like some fancy phrase when you're contempt of court. There you go. That's the fancy phrase. It's good to know your fancy phrases, huh? So the Rob Reiner case is freaking the worst. Today, I listened to over 2 hours of interviews with the alleged unaliver, Nick. These were all interviews that he did on a channel called Dopey. And again, I'll put a link in the description they've got, oh, hi, Billy, darling. Billy BB. Billy BB. I love it. Yes, it's wild. Oh, I know I haven't seen you or talked to you since the whole thing with Rob Reiner. It's so heartbreaking. I mean, I did not know anybody in that family personally, because I did know a lot of people in Southern California when I lived there, especially from the time that we lived in Malibu. But I never knew any of the Reiner family. And yet I feel like I know them. It's weird, but I guess that's from growing up watching Meathead, and then all of the many, many movies and productions that Rob Reiner was a part of. I just realized today, I think it was, that Carl Reiner was the director of The Jerk, which is one of my all-time favorite comedies. Carl Reiner also was the brains behind the Dick Van Dyke Show, which is one of my favorite shows too. Yeah, Princess Bride is one of the top-notch Rob Reiner films. Anybody who hasn't seen that yet, but everybody has seen When Harry Met Sally. But he was even behind Seinfeld and Shawshank Redemption, and I think The Green Mile, because he was part of Castle Rock Productions. He was behind that. So some of these productions don't necessarily have his name attached, but if Castle Rock is attached, then his name is attached. So he was legendary, and especially being second generation. And then, Nick could have walked in those footsteps. He could have done it too. He did that one movie. Have you seen the movie, Billy? The Being Charlie? I thought it was really good. So Nick Reiner co-wrote the screenplay, and then his father directed it. And then his father really, I hate to say anything critical of his dad. And so I just kind of mean it as constructive criticism, because I'm a parent and I know I screw up with my kids all the time. When they were promoting the film about 10 years ago, Being Charlie, Rob was really domineering in all the interviews, and you can tell how uncomfortable it was for Nick, and how he would try to assert himself, how he would try to insert himself sometimes, and he had a lot of trouble doing so. And it was his story. And of course, his father is domineering and much more experienced. And Nick has severe problems, and now has even more severe problems. Although, let's be clear, we don't know what happened yet. Authorities might know. They might have it all on surveillance cameras from inside the house. It wouldn't surprise me. But it also wouldn't surprise me if there's a much bigger picture, which we'll get into. You know how I keep tempering it with, out of respect, I don't really want to speculate. And at the same time, out of respect for the family, and respect for the deceased, at the same time, if there's something there, it needs to be ruled out. Like there's no way in hell, there's no way in creation that Rob Reiner was not on Donnie Tudall's hit list. Like, I'm just going to say it straight up. That's my personal opinion. There's no way he wasn't on a hit list, and that he wasn't on Putin's Daddy Vladdy's hit list. So how can Nick be both out of his mind and calm, calculating, cleaning up afterwards? Billy, I know there's so much that doesn't make sense. The whole thing is such a mind F. Like, if you did that, wouldn't you run like further than 4 miles? Like, you went to a hotel 4 miles away. How convenient that there is a patsy. Yeah. Father authoritarian, mother taking photos of blank. Oh, right. Of Donnie Tudall's. Right. So 1987 was when that book, Art of the Deal, came out, and Michelle Reiner took the Mona Lisa-esque portrait of the disgusting pig. And it's a beautiful portrait, despite the fact that the disgusting pig is in it. It really is a good picture. And Michelle was pretty darn gorgeous too. And wasn't it you, or was it Anna B's? Maybe you were in one of my chats since it happened, that was saying that Donnie Tudall's probably hit on her when she did the portrait, which we know from many people's reports, including his own reports, that that's just how he rolls. And she was a very striking woman. 1987 was maybe a year or two before she met Rob Reiner. She met Rob Reiner on the set for When Harry Met Sally, and she was the production photographer, and they got married shortly thereafter. She was 70 at the time of being deceased. There were many reports that said she was 68, but she was 70. And Rob was 78. He's only a year younger than the Trumpster fire. And you know, their parents knew each other back in the Bronx, Billy darling. The Reiners and the Trumps knew each other. It goes back. Rob Reiner's first wife, Penny Marshall, her brother, the producer, I always thought it was her dad, but it's her brother, older brother, Gary Marshall. The Marshalls go back with the Trumps too. So the Marshalls were also from New York. They weren't from the Bronx. I think they were from Manhattan, and they were pretty fancy folks back then. So, yeah. Romy did not say, look at my brother. Yeah, there's so many bogus reports about what had happened. And in my last video, I tried to do kind of off the cuff a rundown of what I surmise how things went that evening. And when I reviewed my video, I kind of skipped some stuff or missed some stuff. You know, it was the massage therapist that couldn't get a hold of Rob and Michelle, and she was scheduled to give one or both of them massages. So she called Romy, and people said that Romy lived right across the street, and people said that she lived a mile away. I think she lived in the house right next door, actually. And Romy came over, I think, with her roommate or boyfriend, and knew right away when she went in the house that something was wrong, because there was no music, no television, no noise, and there'd been no response to multiple attempts to contact, and that was not like her parents. So she found Rob in the bedroom. I think he was right by the bed. And then she freaked out and she ran out of the room, and maybe her boyfriend was in the hallway and she told him what she saw, and then he went in there. I'm going to just speculate that he went in there to check a pulse, and then saw Michelle was kind of in the doorway of the bathroom, which is why they said 2 different rooms, but they had been asleep in the same bed, and Rob was attacked first. They've got Michelle's smartwatch, so they know the exact time of her passing, and they know from her heart rate, she was sleeping. From the time she woke up, it was 6 minutes, slightly more than 6 minutes, I think, until it was flatline. And the story that I heard from the autopsy reports and the analysis of them is that Rob had tried to fight the attacker for the knife, and that Michelle had defensive wounds, and that she was backing up into the bathroom when her life was extinguished. And I've been saying from the get-go, Billy, and only not from the get-go of that horrible, horrendous post that the sorry excuse for president put on his Truth Social, completely insulting Rob and saying that he caused his own death and that his death was a direct result of his Trump derangement syndrome, and making somebody else really angry. And, everyone freaked out about that post. And it was like the next day that I thought, maybe he's actually letting the cat out of the bag the way he does, maybe there's something to that. And it would have been so easy to spot the tension between Nick and Rob when they were doing all their interviewing, promoting being Charlie. So easy to spot the tension. And then, all these interviews that I've listened to, Nick basically says that he was using while they were promoting, that he wasn't that high during the interviews, that he was getting really high afterwards, but that he was a little high even during the interviews with marijuana. But like with microdosing, and, you just got to throw the whole Charles Manson situation into the picture, because it could so easily be something like that. Nick Reiner had spearheaded the Russian election interference committee back in 2017 to not only research the influence, the interference that Russia had over our election, but to focus heavily on the relationship between Daddy Vladdy and Biggly Piggly. And it was, had some highfalutin folks on the committee. It was nonpartisan. There were Republicans and Democrats. And the focus was not only to get this information together, but to put it all in one place where any of us could just go and readily find it on the internet. If we had questions, that would be the central location for all that information. It's my understanding that committee broke up a year and a half later. And then, of course, Rob was working on a project called The Spy and the Asset, which was a 10 to 13 part miniseries about the spy and the asset. And I don't know how close he was to production. From what I've gathered, he did not have a network picking it up yet, but my guess is that back in 2017, when he formed that committee, that he and Biggly Piggly had been having a public beef ever since. So for at least 8 or 9 years. Major public beef. Major. Mostly Rob Reiner calling out the oligarchy and the, he expressed very definitively the last couple of months his concern that we were about a year away from having zero democracy and zero chance of rebuilding it. So we know that the man was vengeful. He lived for retribution, and Rob Reiner's wife worked with him on all these projects. She was working with him on the spy and the asset. She worked with him on the Russian election interference committee. And they were Jewish. And it was the same day they were attacked, the same day as the mass shooting in Sydney, Australia, at Bondi Beach. It was Sunday the 14th. That was 2 weeks ago today. It seems like it was only a few days ago, doesn't it? So wonder who is next to be off the Oranges list. I know. And just the whole escalation of crazy violence and crazy headline grabbing. I mean, the thing that makes me think that there is something to my conspiracy theory, Charles Manson type of thing, mostly is the timing. That was Sunday the 14th when the Trumpstein file deadline was Friday the 19th. And, that double homicide is bigger than the OJ, in my opinion. They called the OJ double homicide the crime of the century. I think this overshadows it, really, with it being a kid, with it being Rob Reiner. I mean, Anna Bees. Excuse me. Where's my water? And I've got the wax in my teeth. I'm really hungry for dinner, but I'm like, I got to do my live before I take the wax out and put it back in, because that takes forever. So I had a smoothie and I had some yogurt. We'll see how long I last, because it's almost 10 o'clock and I haven't had dinner yet. But I've been staying up late lately, with the holidays and visitors and everything. Anna Bees, how's my dear, my darling? Was Delulu Piggly a pig scorned? Oh, right, by Michelle. Yeah, I know. So what I think is so telling about the fact that she took that picture is that he's made no reference to that. He's still made no mention of it, which a normal person, which we know he's not, would have probably included that information in that terrible post. But even him not doing that and him not being normal, you would think that his staff would bring it up, because not bringing it up is, to me, it's about as suspicious as the Truckee Police Department not bringing up the fact that Kylie Rodney had been in the city hall just a couple of days before she went missing, and that they didn't mention it, and that they didn't use the footage from that for more still shots when, quote unquote, trying to find her. That is so scary. All they care about is owning the libs. Exactly. You know us libtards. I know. The timing is the most damning. Exactly. Both Jazz and Billy, darlings. I am just so happy you're both here. So my hat is annoying because it slides up while I'm talking. I'll see if I can deal with it, because I like it, because, it's from my son being in the Navy, and he's been visiting, and I'm just so proud of him. Studying to be a nurse like Anna Bees, and like Billy, you were a nurse too, right? Yeah, all of that money. The Reiner family has an estate worth over $200,000. And, they have a beachfront home in Malibu. They've got that gorgeous mansion in Brentwood that's probably worth about $10 million. I don't know a figure for the Malibu beach house, but I would bet probably close to 10 million for that too. They probably have houses elsewhere. I do not know. But yeah, I've been trying to learn everything that I can about the family and about the situation and about that night. And I've got loads of notes. I'm sure I've got too much, loads of notes. And let me just quickly run down. I've also been trying to watch The Apprentice that came out last year, or this year. I think it came out in 2025. I've gotten about halfway through that. I've also gotten about halfway through God and Country. You guys, God and Country was one of the last movies that Rob produced or directed. And it's about white nationalism, Christian nationalism, and white supremacy. I've only watched the first half, but you know what it's really about? You know what it starts with? And what the whole first hour was basically about is January 6th. That's what God and Country is about. So that movie coming out last year, 2024, the year that Biggly Piggly won the McDonald's French Fry Commemorative Pin Award, and Rob Reiner won and was nominated for a couple of Emmys and a couple of like Screen Actor Guild Awards and things like that. You know, real awards. And he won one or two of them. The last movie he did was called Fighting. I think it's called Fighting for My Life or Defending My Life, about Albert Brooks. So who is paying for Nick's lawyers and why? Well, the kids, I think that the family estate is probably paying for the lawyers. And even if he did it, even though you could be really critical of him, I still think that his parents would want him to have good representation. I'm really curious, though, because the attorney is the same attorney that Karen Reed used, and we know she was set up like a bowling pin. And, you know, they thought Nick had been sober for the last six and a half years, but obviously he wasn't. And in all the interviews that I've watched of him, I'm not sure if he's had a period of more than 6 months of being sober. And I don't even know if 6 months means no pot, because he kind of did like a damage control kind of, what do you call that? Management kind of train wreck management, you know, damage control, damage management. There's like a nice little buzz phrase that's just not coming to mind. Let's see. $200 million estate plus royalties. Piggy is hella jelly. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, they both were from the Bronx. They were both 6'2" on paper, although Rob Reiner was like really 6'2", and I really don't think the Trumpster fire ever was. I think that he wore lifts in his shoes, you know, kind of like Sly Stallone, but Sly Stallone was like 5'6". I think that Trumpster fire was like 5'11", and that he wore 3-inch lifts to make himself 6'2", but then he would say 6'3". I don't know. Somebody could have drugged him and got him on again. Easy peasy. I mean, microdosing, all of the Jacob's Ladder types of medicines or drugs that, you know, the type of mind control, what they call the MK Ultra, is something that the CIA was practicing. It's something that Charles Manson was practicing. And Charles Manson had a lot of Hollywood connections, and there's many people who say that he had a lot of government connections too, but of course the government denies any of that. Romy smoked too. Yeah, you could tell that Romy was really tight with her brother Nick, even at times when she would be frustrated with him. And she did go to college. I just learned that in one of the last interviews I listened to from the Dopey channel. I've been trying to figure out if any of the kids went to college. She went to an alternative fancy high school in Los Angeles, not too far from where they live, but a little bit south from where they live. And then Nick dropped out of high school. I think he got his GED. And I don't know about Jake. I don't know what his education was like. But I think Jake had been working in the entertainment field and, actually working, as opposed to Nick, who really wasn't very motivated, although he was really motivated when he did his own movie. He got very motivated around that. They all drank, so I don't know. MK Ultra. Yeah, exactly. That's what I wonder. That is exactly what I wonder. So God and Country, and then there's another movie, another documentary thing that I started watching that I'm blanking on right now. I'm sure it's written in my notes somewhere. Yeah, LBS, or LBJ, sorry. Lyndon Johnson, LBJ. So that movie was made years ago. I forget what year it was made, but I never watched it. I've been watching it, so I'm about halfway through that too. And there's, I keep learning of more movies that Rob made that would probably give more insight into the bigger picture. They could have got Nick at the Christmas party that same night. I know, Billy. I know. And at the same time, it's entirely possible that he did this all on his own, and that the damn Trumpster fire just scored with the coincidence of the timing and how good that would have been for him. For a couple of months, I've been saying how he needed something like 9/11, that Gary Condit got so lucky with 9/11 when he was the headlines every day and Chandra Levy was missing. And then 9/11 happened and everybody forgot about it. And then they pretended to find Chandra Levy in the woods a year later. They paid some guy from South America to say that he did it. And the whole thing was a shit show. It wasn't until more recently that I thought that actually the United States government could have well had something to do with 9/11, intentionally trying to distract from Gary Condit, not so much to protect that one dirtbag, but to protect all of the dirtbags that do these types of things with their mistresses that go missing. It's nothing new. I mean, that's just the whole Handmaid's Tale thing, the whole transporting thing with kids, that the government could have had a hand in. I know there's all kinds of crazy conspiracy theories about it, but that they could have been trying to make a distraction for the Gary Condit situation so that the Gary Condit situation with Chandra Levy wouldn't blow the lid off of all of the scumbags and all of their horrible crimes that they've been doing. When you think about that, and that was it 01? So that was during the time that Virginia Giuffre was hanging out with Little E and Jizz. She was with them from at least 2000 to 2002. So, yeah, it never occurred to me that that was anything except sheer luck for Gary Condit. And I had been half jokingly and half dead serious that the Trumpster fire would be trying to come up with something as big, as distracting as 9/11 to distract, get his own ass off the hook. And this Rob Reiner situation is pretty effing gnarly. Absolutely. So yeah, what you said, Billy, they could have gotten Nick at the Christmas party that same night. Well, they could have been working on him for the last 8 years easily. And we don't know anything about his politics, his political opinions. He could well have been a MAGA. He could well have been part of like the whole manosphere. He could have been going down the Nick Fuentes rabbit hole. Who knows? I mean, he was a 32-year-old young man who was extremely immature for his age. Yeah. So, you know, he showed a lot of disdain for his father in those interviews, and you can, and the movie itself was about the weak parts of their relationship, and honestly, their relationship was mostly the weak parts. I mean, they had a pretty shitty relationship up until probably that movie, I think, helped a great deal. But you can see the tension in those two, but especially coming from Nick during those interviews, during those promotional, whatever you want to call them, presentations, kind of like, totally blanking. You know, when they come out and talk to the news, what's that called? Help. Nick is the middle child. Right, exactly. So Jake is 2 years older, 34. Press release. That's what I'm trying to talk about. So when they were doing press releases, the interviews, exactly. No, I was remembering that word. I wasn't remembering press release. So they were doing a lot of press releases. And then they were doing the press releases again for Spinal Tap 2 that had just been released in the theaters, I think, in September. So that might have been real triggering for Nick, that his father had this nice big project without him. And his mother, too. I think his mother worked on Spinal Tap 2 with him. Yeah. It's just so devastating. But yeah, exploiting weaknesses is what the Don does, and it's what Rory Cohen trained him to do back in whatever it was, probably the 80s, I think, was when Rory Cohen got his paws on him. And that's what the first half of The Apprentice is about so far, basically, is Rory Cohen, Cohn, that guy is really, really slimy. He was an attorney, for anybody who doesn't know, and he kind of taught Trump all his dirty fucking tricks. So, yeah. So I've been really interested too in the Sharon Tate quadruple homicide, and there was a fifth person who was unalived, as well as the 4 people inside the house. There was an 18-year-old who was kind of like a groundskeeper who was also unalived, unfortunately. But Charles Manson had been arrested shortly thereafter, but for a totally different thing, like for Grand Theft Auto or something. And then, they figured out that those 3 women did it. And then one of the women was bragging about Charles Manson. That's how the authorities found out that he was involved in that quadruple homicide. They didn't put two and two together. It was put together for them by one of the other defendants, one of the other criminals. So let's see. Did you know that that there's already 147 data points on each one of us that is out there? And so now you got to think of Doge having 147 data points minimum on each one of us, and Daddy Vladdy having 147 data points on each one of us minimum. They know everything. Oh, Charlie Kirk was even included in Rob Reiner's movie God and Country. And they call the Christian nationalism, they call it a theocratic nation. So the marble, you guys, I sent Anna Bees some texts about this. I hope that was okay with you. I hope it didn't sound too crazy. You know the gray marble that Biggly Piggly, I almost said Daddy Vladdy, that Biggly Piggly took photos of and posted on his Truth Social account. And we have to remember, he had to create Truth Social because he'd been banned from every single social media platform. Again, just like Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes had to make his own platform too because he'd been banned from every platform. So anyway, he has posted photos recently of some bathrooms that he redid in the gray marble in the White House, and some flooring that he redid with the gray marble. And, you know, I worked in the King County Superior Courthouse, where that entire building inside is gray marble. And I felt like everybody who worked there, that their faces matched the marble. And it's a very cold, icky kind of color and material, in my opinion. You know, it's good for like smashing ice cream on, but with those weird pictures and him saying that he wants to make armrests out of marble, like what could be more uncomfortable than marble for armrests? And that's for the seating in the Trump Kennedy Center. I know I should just call it the Kennedy Center. But I looked up gray marble and what it could mean. First of all, Adolf was obsessed with marble. I think he mostly used red marble, and I don't know if that's even available anymore. And that actually is really cool looking, the red marble. But the gray marble is a nod to the Aryan nation, allegedly, from what I found online. And it's also, I think it was in France that they would recover bodies out of the river, and they would lay the bodies on marble slabs and put them behind glass. And then before the days of refrigeration, the cold marble was how they would refrigerate, basically, and dripping water onto the remains. And then they would display these, trigger warning, they would display the corpses on the marble behind the glass so that the public could view them. And it was considered a form of entertainment. And it was also so that the public could view them to try to identify them. So it just, I just get a really sick, cold feeling from the bathrooms that he redid with marble, and now the armrests that he's wanting to redo with marble, and the flooring that he redid with that gray marble. And why not different colored marble? I mean, why not black marble? Or I'm sure there's some cool like greenish marble. I don't know if there's any more of the red marble or if that all got used up by Adolf, because I do think that there's a finite amount of marble in the earth. You know, that's got to be one of those resources that him and Daddy Vladdy are trying to steal all the land for. The lithium, the oil, and things like marble, and of course, precious gemstones and gold, right? He's obsessed with gold. Allegedly, Nick is the middle child. Yeah. What do they know about us? So they know everything about us, Annabes. They know like where we've been today. They know what we've been watching. They know who we've been talking to. They know our address, phone number, birthday. They know our mother's maiden names. They know where we went to school. They know everything. 147 points. Love your text. Oh, good. Good. Because, yeah, I was like, I don't want to creep her out because it was kind of random. Let's see. The first one I said, oh, and I was incorrect. I said it took authorities years to realize Charles Manson masterminded everything. Not years, months, but they only found out because one of his disciples bragged about it. Then they still deny any affiliation with the CIA and Manson, but they both practiced the same MK Ultra methods at the same time. And they were, probably pretty cutting edge back then in the late 60s is when that was. The gray marble that Donnie Two Dolls is posting, it's a dog whistle. So I had to look up dog whistle because people on the political channels are often saying, that's a dog whistle. And it's pretty straightforward. It's like, the dogs hear it, but we don't, right? So it's like MAGA hears it, but we don't. So MAGA sees the light gray marble and they're like, yeah, right on, white supremacy, Aryan nation. But the rest of us, we're just like, why does he like gray marble so much, right? So, yeah, I'm glad I looked at that because I wanted to make sure that people that watch my videos know what dog whistle means. It's one of those phrases that is used a lot on the political channels, just like scorched earth. We like to say balls to the walls, right? Over here in true crime. So that is crazy. He is crazy. I'm just over him and the way he has brought out the worst in people, like patients that get angry and hit staff and nothing ever happens to them. He is like an Alzheimer's patient that's hitting all of us psychologically, and nothing bad can ever happen. It can only good happen, right? Piggy wants marble so he can poop on the floor. Yeah. I mean, he's just so gross. Oh, and then speaking of gross, you guys know that Caroline Levitt, not only is she pregnant, but she's been getting those effing lip injections while pregnant. And to think that the president and RFK Jr. try to tell pregnant women not to take Tylenol, but yet here's the press secretary shooting Botox into her freaking lips, which, your lips are very sensitive, that it can easily cause herpes sores when you're doing something like that to your lips, even if you've never had herpes sores. I mean, she certainly looks like she has herpes sores, but anyway, for her to be doing that when she's pregnant is so freaking dangerous, so disgusting. So she's due in May. Oh, and I saw somebody posted that it's that she's expecting her first legitimate child, and I thought that was so cute. And I don't even believe that either one of these babies belongs to the guy that she married. The way she looks at Trump, I'm thinking she's having his babies. The way he talks about her effing freaking machine gun lips, thinking he could easily be the daddy. But that's just my opinion. So what else do I have on this? In that horrible post, no. In the other horrible post, the one that Donnie Two Dolls put up like on Christmas Day, wishing all of the sleazebags that love Jeffrey Epstein a Merry Christmas. Didn't it sound like he was talking about himself? Like, seriously, he's the one who loved Jeffrey Epstein. He's the one who gave him money. He's the one that hung out with him. And I was going to read it to you guys, but because then he switches over to wanting to talk about the election fraud. Let's see. Trump Christmas post, and what he put up 150 Trump Christmas posts. Oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to play you the Paula Poundstone about it. Okay. Trump Christmas post about sleazebags. Wasn't it to sleazebags? He's just such a whack job. Like, so passive aggressive or just aggressive. Okay, I think it's here. Merry Christmas to all, including the many sleazebags who loved Jeffrey Epstein, gave him bundles of money, went to his island, attended his parties, and thought he was the greatest guy on earth. Isn't that a description of himself? Loved him, gave him bundles of money, I think over $1 billion over the course of their quote unquote friendship. Went to his island, attended his parties. I mean, they had parties where they were the only two guys there, and a whole slew of cheerleaders for football teams or calendar girls from like Victoria's Secret, and they would be the only two guys there. And thought he was the greatest guy on earth, only to drop him like a dog when things got too hot. And then when he talks about himself in the third person, and then falsely claimed that they had nothing to do with him, didn't know him, he was a disgusting person, and then blame, of course, President Donald J. Trump, who was actually the only one who did not drop Epstein, and long before it became fashionable to do so. Okay, he talks about himself in the third person, which is just knucking futs. And again, he's the one who falsely claimed that he had nothing to do with him, that he didn't know him, that he would say that, yeah, he's a disgusting person. He's totally talking about himself. But then, let's see if it goes to the rest of... I think this is the rest of it. This is an article where they keep breaking it up in different paragraphs. So when their names get brought out in the ongoing radical left witch hunt, plus one low-life Republican Massey, and it is revealed that they are Democrats all, there will be a lot of explaining to do, much like there was when it was made public that the Russia hoax was a fictitious story, a total scam, and had nothing to do with, all caps, Trump, in parentheses and extra parentheses within parentheses. The guy's just nuts. If only he knew grammar. The failing New York Times, among many others, was forced to apologize for their bad and faulty election reporting, again in quotes and capitalized, even to the point of losing many subscribers due to their highly inaccurate, fake, all caps in parentheses, coverage. Trump added, arguing, now the same losers are at it again, only this time so many of their friends, mostly innocent, will be badly hurt and reputationally tarnished. But sadly, that's the way it is in the world of the corrupt Democrat politics. Enjoy what may be your last Merry Christmas. President Donald J. Trump. Enjoy what may be your last Merry Christmas is my first thought, probably many people's first thought, is he's planning on blowing up the world. But it skipped the part about how he said that now the next thing we need to focus on is the election fraud. He's talking about like that 2020 was a fraudulent election. But he's also projecting, because I think 2016 was a fraudulent election. 2020 probably was too. And then 2024, I believe, was. If there was interference in 2016, why wouldn't there be interference in 2020? I definitely think there was interference in 2024. The Election Truth Alliance continues to do their nitty-gritty statistical research in proving exactly who, what, where, when, and how the election was tampered with. So they're getting that together and filing lawsuits about it. What does machine gun lips even mean? I know. Well, I mean, I think how the way she just like spits out so many mean, stupid words, but definitely a double meaning, and sort of like Hot Lips from MASH. And yeah, I mean, if he worked for a corporation, if he was the CEO and he said that about his executive assistant, he would have been fired in a freaking heartbeat. Sounds like a threat. I know. I mean, or he's just saying that, from now on, all you get for Christmas is 2 pencils and 2 dolls, and that's it. So this is the last Merry Christmas where you have other options. But no, I agree. I think he's threatening to blow up the world. I mean, he had his meeting today with Zelensky. He not only talked to Putin beforehand, but he bragged about it. Like, he's so stupid. Like, no, you don't need to be consulting with him. And then if you are, thanks for telling us. But yeah, you probably should have kept that to yourself. Let's see. So he wanted to throw Marla Maples down the stairs when she was pregnant with his baby. According to Michael Wolff, said that Jeffrey had told him a story about Biggly Piggly coming to him and saying, what if she fell down the stairs? I don't want to deal with this baby. And even that sleazebag, little E, his response was basically like, you can't be talking like that. You can't be thinking like that. Just no, And then, a couple of decades later, Ivana goes down a flight of stairs. I don't know if his brother that fell and then passed away in the hospital shortly thereafter, I don't know if he fell downstairs or if he just fell. I mean, he was 70 years old, but I think he was in good health. And, Ivana was 73, but she was in good health. And I would venture to guess that Robert might have fallen downstairs, because just falling down isn't going to necessarily put you on death's doorstep. But then, Virginia Giuffre said that she fell down and that's how she broke her freaking neck. I don't believe her. So this is kind of a little lighthearted and funny. When Pamela Bondi said that she had the Epstein files on her desk right now to review, when she said that earlier this year, was she talking about the millions of Epstein files? Like, you just got to picture her desk with all these, like, cartoon, like mile high millions of files. But even for her to say that, I've got them sitting on my desk right now, ready to review, as if they're like paper files sitting on her desk, when of course they're not. They're going to be electronic files. Just weird. I mean, she's just a liar. It was 100,000% a lie. If she had said, I have some of those files sitting on my desk right now, but then later she tried to say, I wasn't talking about those files. I was talking about the JFK, the RFK, the MLK, the 9/11, all the files, not just the e-files. So, the Reiner's Red Rum also puts Gavin Newsom in the hot seat. Donnie Tudall's favorite guy, favorite governor. It really puts him in the hot seat. So yeah, I think if he had involvement in that, and the more I think about it and learn about it, the more I think that it's impossible that he didn't have anything to do with it. Even if Nick basically did it all on his own, that Rob Reiner would have been at the top of Biggly Piggly's shit list, his enemies list. I keep thinking too, I go back so often to that Jessica Aber, the attorney from the the Eastern Division of Virginia, the one who resigned on Inauguration Day. Jessica Aber was like 43, and she allegedly passed away in her sleep, and then she allegedly unalived self a couple of months later, when Biggly Piggly and the Big E were at Bedminster, where Ivana just happens to be in the dirt at Bedminster Golf Course. So they were there the same night that Jessica Aber passed away unexpectedly. She looked pretty healthy too, if you look at pictures of her. But she not only was the attorney of that district that's basically DC, because it's like Arlington and the eastern part of Virginia that's just across the Potomac River Bridge to DC. She specialized in cryptocurrency. She specialized in corruption. She specialized in human transporting and other transporting, substances. And she just happens to drop like a fly. And then it's the same position that Lindsay Halligan was appointed to. So there was that guy whose name I'm forgetting that was appointed to the position, who wouldn't file the charges against Letitia James and James Comey because he said that there were no charges to be filed. And then they appointed Lindsay Halligan. It was the same position that the deceased lawyer Jessica Aber was in. I'm thinking that the Biggly Piggly's a serial unaliver, you guys. That's what I'm thinking. I'll just say it. Yeah. But when he did his little thing on the telly the other night, his 18-minute bullcrap speech interrupting the grand finale of The Survivor, what an asshat. Like, people who watch shows like that, Survivor, that's not one I've ever gotten into, but they are so into it. And then to interrupt the grand finale part, but it's like he wants to be that Survivor star. So obviously he was going after their audience, but also he's a reality TV star. I mean, that's what he's known for. That and his freaking pageants where he'd molest everybody. So even when Nick trashed the guest house years ago, and it was, I have a lot of trouble like pinning down the time frame of, I think he went into his first rehab when he was 14, not 15. They just try to make it sound less bad by saying 15. I think he'd been through most of the 17 rehabs by the time he was 18, but I'm not sure. I thought that he had had the homelessness then before making the movie, but I'm not sure. The homelessness might have been after making the movie. Even listening to all these interviews, it's hard to piece it together. But when he is on those dopey interviews, I don't think he was older than 24. And he's talking about the time that he trashed the guest house. He calls it my guest house. I trashed my guest house. It's like, whose guest house? But even that could potentially, I mean, I know this is a stretch, but even that could have been part of the MK Ultra and part of laying the foundation for him having a violent streak, for him going off the rails and being out of control. Because what inspired that? He was hell-bent on getting high, even when he was in rehab and even when he was out of rehab. According to himself, all the interviews that I've heard, the only time that he really was motivated to stay sober was when he was working on the movie. That focus really helped him, and it made him excited. And that's what he felt like was lacking in his life. Like he didn't have purpose. He didn't have passion. He didn't have, he needed to find meaning. He needed to find an identity. He was so sick of being Carl Reiner's grandson and Rob Reiner's son. He felt like nobody. I think all these mass red rums are MK Ultra. I know. I think a lot of the MAGA people, like the guy who went on that spree in Minnesota, I think a lot of these people are MK Ultra. The two on New Year's this past New Year's, Matthew Livelsberger with the Cybertruck in front of the Trump Tower in Vegas, and that other guy with the white F-150 in New Orleans, who I think he ran over a bunch of people and then also used a firearm. I think he unalived like 14 or 18, the one in New Orleans. But yeah, I mean, those were oddly similar to each other. Just like the two airplane crashes, so oddly similar to each other. I'll reiterate from my last video. The airplane crash like a couple of weeks ago, the one with the NASCAR driver, and then very similar to what happened with that airplane in Boca Raton. The U.S. communication company that was worth so much money that they tried to downplay, like, oh, just a little family business. Let's see. US Info-Com LLC. It's a very big little company that the Stark family started. So both Robert Stark's airplane earlier this year, I think that was in February, and it was February, March, somewhere around there. And then the one with the NASCAR driver a couple weeks ago. Both of those planes took off. And remember, most plane crashes happen during takeoff and during landings. But both of those airplanes took off, were in the air for about 10 minutes, and tried to make it back. Before the 10 minutes was up, they crashed. Tried to make it back to where they'd taken off from. And that's just remarkably, eerily similar. But the other thing that I thought was so similar was when I learned that not only did the NASCAR driver do a whole bunch of humanitarian rescues with Hurricane Helene back in 2024, but also that Robert Stark had done a whole bunch of humanitarian rescues with his Cessna. And so I just got to wondering if they're trying to extinguish all of the people that have the ability to help other people in an apocalypse, basically. I don't know. But yeah, I agree, Annabise. The thing in Sydney, Australia could be too. Just because it's in Australia doesn't mean that it didn't have any connections to the States. And also interesting because Australia is where Virginia Giuffre was. So I don't know. I mean, I think that she was extinguished. You know, she'd been afraid of that happening for years. I think all of the survivors that have spoken out have been afraid of that happening. And for some of them, it does. But yeah, one of the problems that Nick had with making that movie with his dad is that he was trying to communicate, he was trying to depict the trouble that he had in their dynamic. And then some of what he put in the movie got basically censored out by his dad. So I just think that's really unfortunate when the person that you're trying to speak out against, the person that you're trying to tell the truth about, has that kind of power over you, which is very similar to Virginia Giuffre and her having accused Donnie Tudals in the past. And she also accused Alan Dershowitz in the past. And then both of them, she recanted her accusations. With Alan Dershowitz, she came up with the clever phrasing that he forced her, I'm sure, because he says the exact same thing, like word for word, that she might have mistaken him for someone else. That's all. And then with Donnie Tudals, it became that she had a really foggy memory and she didn't remember ever seeing the Trumpster fire do anything inappropriate. She didn't remember seeing him on the island. She didn't remember seeing him at a party. She didn't remember anything that anybody asked her in a deposition about Donnie Tudals would start with, I don't remember. So that is pretty clear code for I'm refusing to answer the question, right? The father was the director, so how could the son possibly speak his mind with the power dynamic? Exactly. Yeah. Have you seen the movie, Billy? It's so good. The man who plays the prince in The Princess Bride plays Rob Reiner's role. So he's like a former actor who is then running for governor of California. I think his name is Cary Elwes, Elws, something like that. He's a fantastic actor. Does a really good job. So devastating. So what else, you guys? It's going to be New Year's in a few days. I can't believe how tacky Donnie Tudals was with that thing about the food with the reporters and Zelensky today. He's such an effing pig. He's so tacky. He's so treacherous. Like, who does that? He's like, help yourselves to all the fancy food. Oh, wait, no, don't. Get out of here. Because then you'll just say that I was bribing you. So screw y'all. I mean, of course, I'm recapping, but that was essentially what I saw. freaking monster. Absolute monster. Do you guys have plans for, yeah, the guy from Princess Bride. Yeah, the prince from The Princess Bride plays the dad in Being Charlie. And Nick had a good friend that passed away. He talked about it in his last interview on the Dopey channel. I want to say the guy's name might have been Tom. He passed away from an overdose. And I think that he did get sober for a while after that. I think that that was a turning point in his life. Wesley? Oh, is that the character's name in Princess Bride? The one that is opposite Robin Wright? It's just such a brilliant movie. I mean, who doesn't love Columbo? And then the little kid that Columbo's reading the storybook to. What a brilliant, brilliant film. And so many brilliant films. I mean, I was surprised to learn about Castle Rock being that he was one of the founders of Castle Rock. So he had a lot to do with Seinfeld and Green Mile and Shawshank Redemption and Curb Your Enthusiasm. And then there's the whole thing, again, this is recapping from my last couple of videos, the whole thing with Cheryl Hines, RFK Jr.'s wife, had been Rob Reiner's personal assistant for 5 years back in the 90s. So she was hired by Rob's wife, Michelle, in 93 as a part-time employee to help organize Rob's 50th birthday party. And then after the party, they hired her full-time, and she stayed with them for 5 years. And then I think Rob pulled some strings to get her a break on Curb Your Enthusiasm. And then the rest is history with RFK Jr. But, you know, you guys might remember earlier this year, I think it was right after the inauguration, or maybe it even was the inauguration, when Donnie Two Dolls was shaking everybody's hand. He was like going through the line of people receiving him. And he skipped Cheryl Hines, like really, really gave her the cold shoulder. But he did shake RFK Jr.'s hand, and Cheryl like tried to rebel, and she tried to say something. She tried to do something about it. It was pretty vicious, really. And for him to do that to RFK Jr. and then for RFK Jr. to keep licking his boot, they all knew each other. Exactly. It's so insidious. Yeah, she got butt hurt, LOL. Well, I was surprised to see that Penny Marshall's family had a history with the Trumps too. I think that they were friends. I think they were on good terms. But I mean, who the F is friends with any of these Trumpster fires? I mean, Mary Trump seems like a friendly person with real friends. But Fred Trump and, you know, the granddad and her uncle, I mean, anybody that they would call a friend would just be somebody that they could use and manipulate for business transactions. Of course, that's all anything is to them. She threw up her hand and opened her mouth wide and looked around for validation, and no one cared. Exactly. And, you know, so not only was she a Democrat, but she was tight with the Reiners. And then the whole thing with the Reiners being scheduled to have dinner with the Obamas that very night that they were found slaughtered. And I can't help but think that the Obamas would have a lot of interest in the Spy and the Asset docuseries that Rob and Michelle were working on, that they would both be interested in hearing what he had to say, and that they would have some information to share as well. It's just freaking crazy. But yeah, being from the Bronx, being from the same little neighborhood in the Bronx, and that their families knew each other. Carl Reiner had interactions with Fred Trump. So the kids, Penny Marshall had her daughter Tracy when she was 19. So Penny Marshall's daughter Tracy, Rob was Penny's second husband, but then he adopted Tracy as his own child. He's a little bit younger than Penny Marshall, and then he's not that much older than his daughter Tracy. So he's 17 years older than his daughter Tracy, but his wife is only like 9 years older than his daughter Tracy. His wife Michelle, but they got married when she was about 35 and Rob was about 43, I think, back in 89, 90. And then they had the 3 kids. I think the kids were all born in the 90s. And then, Nick had a lot of trouble. He never went to school, it sounds like, from his interviews. That I don't know if he was homeschooled or what, but he was off the rails. And then he talks about in those dopey interviews, when it's disgusting, trigger warning, when he lost his virginity to a hooker from Craigslist when he was 14. And he had her come to his parents' house twice in the same night. What a sick child. It's just so unreal. And see, that I think that's one of the reasons why I feel like it just hit so close to home is I knew a lot of kids that lived parallel lives to the Reiners. I knew a lot of kids who lived parallel lives to the Reiners and did a lot of dangerous stuff and a lot of that type of adult stuff when they were way too young. So, life in the fast lane, right? Southern California. Yeah. It's so devastating. I guess that Rob and Michelle had vocalized that they wanted to be buried together, and so they got their wish. I mean, in a Shakespearean kind of Greek tragedy sense, there's something to be said for that, I guess. Yeah. I mean, I hope that there's a solid case and that no stone is unturned. I hope that it's not a bunch of effery. I mean, there's a very good chance that Nick doesn't remember what he did. He could have really been in a psychotic rage. And maybe he didn't do it. Maybe he was there. Maybe he let people in, whether they be rug dealers, a rug deal gone bad, or people from the Proud Boys or the Oath Keepers. It just doesn't make any sense that he would have gone and stayed in a hotel room 4 miles away. But I'm thinking that the red stuff that was in the hotel room, that is probably his red stuff, because he spent 45 minutes in the house after Michelle's smartwatch says that she flatlined. It was like almost 45 minutes until he left in their Mercedes vehicle that was parked in their garage. So he had a lot of time to clean up. And then when he checked into the hotel room, what's it called? Pierside is the name of the hotel. It's right across the street from the pier. And I think the room was like between $400 and $500. And I've heard people say that he used a credit card, but I don't believe that. I believe that the employee that was helping him to check in said that he was disheveled, that he was like he looked like he was tweaking. What was the term that he used? Something like that. And that, he was all keyed up, that he definitely seemed not normal, but it's like 4:30 in the morning too. And then that the money was like crumpled up in different pockets in his jacket, but that he paid with cash, and almost $500 cash. But maybe what they mean is that he showed his ID. And actually, usually, so, I told you I worked in a fancy hotel for a few years. We had to get a credit card on record, even if they were paying cash, in case they trashed the place, right? So he probably did use a credit card because they demanded it for checking in, but he paid with cash. Nick is lying about the hooker to look cool, I tell you. Well, I hope he's lying about it, because that's just sick. Have you heard him talking about it? It's so gross. It's so gross. And 14, it's just absolutely awful. I mean, it reminds me of like Risky Business. Maybe he saw that movie and thought he could replicate that. I don't know. He said he learned about the Craigslist, the back page, from people in rehab. So, but yeah, I mean, addicts are liars. So that's a good point, Billy. It's like you can't take them at face value. Just like the dear leader, right? He's a liar and an addict. I think he's addicted to power. He's definitely addicted to money. I think he's addicted to substances too, whether that's like Adderall or something illicit. What was it that I wanted to say about that? I wanted to say, I haven't really formulated this idea that Donnie Toodles grew up in such a bubble, right? He's never been to a grocery store. He doesn't know where they keep the apples, the refrigerator in the back that the old lady took the apple back to when she was trying to buy 3 apples, but then decided to buy 2 because they were so expensive. Crazy ass story. He's never heard the word groceries. Like, it's an old fashioned word. Yeah, I think I heard my grandmother say it once or twice many, many years ago. He lives in such a freaking bubble that I was just thinking today, like, how he's so insatiable for the bottomless pit of money and billions and trillions and gazillions. And I thought he probably doesn't even like it's all monopoly money to him. Like, he probably doesn't even realize how absurd these numbers are. I mean, of course he doesn't care because he wants to be an oligarch, but it's like, he also reminds me of like the Twilight Zone, like the episode where the guy is like the only person alive on Earth. That's who Donnie Toodles reminds me of. Like, he's so butthurt and wants to act like he doesn't need anybody and is threatening that this is everybody's last Merry Christmas. But he has a bunker. He's got a fortified bunker, right? He can have his hookers go down there with him. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. And then speaking of his hookers, he's still got Elena Haba working for him. He's still got Lindsay Halligan signing documents as if she's working for him, which she's not. She's not an employee there. But like her name was on some documents just in the last couple of days. So freaking weird. All right, you guys, it's 11 o'clock. I should wrap up. Thanks so much for being here. I love you, darlings. You're the best. I'm so happy to be back in my studio. It took me so long to get my stuff back in here and get it mostly set up. Don't forget to hit your like button if you haven't already, please. And I'm going to go ahead and sign off since it's getting so late. And anything else you guys want to say, parting words? We've got half a dozen people in here. Thanks everyone for watching, whether you're here live or on the replay crew. What's Nighty night, right? Is that it? Bye, girls. All right. End stream. Drink your water. Eat your protein. See you shortly.